Welcome, y'all. It's The Broken Brain. I am your host, Dwight Hurst. And I am joined today by no one. Actually, this is a rerun of an episode that we first made, I think, a couple years ago. Chris Revill and myself, we reviewed a Christmas special that you might find on Amazon Prime called Snowy Day. This is not an ad for Amazon Prime. That's just where you can see a snowy day. And so we get into where that special came from and the feelings that it elicits and what it's trying to say about community and expectations, and really quite a deep thing for being a very simple little story. And this has been a very popular episode. A lot of people have commented on it to me and downloaded it. Well, obviously, if you've heard it before. So if you've heard it before, you can enjoy it again. If you have heard it before and don't want to enjoy it again, hey, wait a minute, and in a day or two, we're going to have another one. End of this week, right before Christmas Eve, the new holiday special about specials will come on, where I have my brother and sister and I talking about how we used to record all the specials in order to make a big old master tape, and what that meant to us as kids, and just one of the ways we got down with the Christmas spirit in our house. So I hope that you enjoy that, and I hope wherever you are, if you have a holiday in mind that you are celebrating, or if you don't, I hope that you're having a good holiday winter season. And that, as my understanding is that a lot of the holiday traditions are derived from practices to remind us that we're going to survive this long winter. And so if you are in the colder areas, then hang in there. Relief is coming. We're still alive. Light the fires, light the lights, light the trees, whatever it is that you do to get a little extra light into your life. Those of you in the warm climates, how dare you? No, good for you. Good for you. You live there. So, all right. Hopefully, and I can predict you probably will, because a lot of people have enjoyed this episode with Chris Revill of the Let's Chat podcast and me of the Broken Brain podcast talking about the snowy day. The Broken Brain. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Let it go a little longer when we're doing it live, semi-live. It's not live, but because I like hearing it.
I really like that music.
Well, thank you. So we didn't come up with good lyrics for it yet, but 2021 is going to be the year for everything good to happen. So welcome. I got Chris Revill from Let's Chat Podcast here on the line.
What?
We're doing things. I don't know if I'm going to use the visual data, but there we go. We can see each other and Zoom. That's how technology works. So I want to say happy holidays to everybody out there, not exclusively a Merry Christmas type of audience, because we have a worldwide audience, I'm sure, and different people who do different things over the winter and everything like that. We are going to be, it's kind of focusing on a Christmas special today is what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about the special Snowy Day, which is available on Amazon Prime. Not a sponsor of this podcast.
Not yet.
Not yet. We used to podcast together a lot and have some award-winning episodes of TV Ate My Brain out there where we talked about Mr. Robot a long time ago. You've been on my podcast before. I've been on yours. Yeah. We just recorded an episode about DuckTales. We haven't put that out there. I'm going to put that out there on my main feed here.
Okay, I think I lost it.
And I'll have to decide if I share it with you.
And for Dwight and I also have talked on the phone as just friends. More frequently than podcasting. So I think that's one of the best gifts of podcasting is the real life friendships that get born out of it.
We haven't recorded everything we've said to each other, but it's still okay.
Sometimes we're private.
Those are the secret conversations. You can get them behind the paywall, only if you were taping us. But the NSA has access. So happy holidays, Chris.
Happy holidays. Is Hanukkah still happening right now?
Oh,
well, if it's currently Hanukkah and we're recording, happy Hanukkah, everyone.
Happy Hanukkah, everyone. It was last week. It started last week. Sorry. Chris, what's your history with this show, A Snowy Day? Have you ever seen it before?
Heard of it. Didn't I did recognize the children's book. I think we have it, but you know what kids are, they have lots of books and they find their one. But I didn't know much about it. And then of course I looked at the voice cast and the narration and all that, the information. I was like, oh my God. Yeah. And I thought the animation was just absolutely beautiful, but yeah, it wasn't something on my radar. And I have a 3.5-year-old. So like, if I try to show her something, she'll automatically hate it. So I'm not at days where I can just show her things anymore. So if it's not Thomas Train, I don't watch it.
There is an element of that you get into, right? Where it's like, I don't know about this. She'll come back around when she processes things differently. I'm sure.
Love, but I'm like, I'm not going to try to show you this until next year.
Well, and then she'll get into showing you things. So a lot of things you get exposed to because of them. One of the really interesting things about this is that it's very true. The art style is very true to the book, very close to it, by Ezra Jack Keats is the author of the original book. And the voice talents and everything are very, very impressive as well. I'm not getting too lost in there, but you've got Lawrence Fishburne narrating. You've got Regina King as playing the mom. Daniel Hansley Jr. plays Peter, the main protagonist. I'm not as familiar with him, but anyway, you have a lot of people. Angela Bassett's in there, and so on and so forth. You can look that up. Everybody has IMDb, so I'll let them do that.
What's great about Amazon? They have that little feature that you can press the button when you press pause. It shows you who's on screen in the show or even just on the scene. So that was really helpful for. I really like that. It was
nice to see that. Music, great, and all those kinds of things. One of the things that I went back as well, I looked at some of the older versions. You can go on YouTube, and Snowy Day by Ezra Jack Keats. There's several readings, audio readings. Audio would be the more preferred way to read something instead of silent. But there are a lot of YouTubes where there's readings of the book. And a couple of things that are really interesting. I'm going to get lost just in the book. We'll talk about the special itself. But one thing that I was not aware of is that, let me back up a little bit. I had read the book a long time ago before, and I had forgotten that it existed when this came out in 2016, and then was watching it with my daughter a couple of years ago and realized that it existed as a Christmas special. Going back, not remembering much about the book and listening to it, the book is not really Christmas oriented. It's Snowy Day oriented. It is a snow day that Peter engages in. Doesn't really mention Christmas. I did also have some other books that feature Peter. There's a series: Whistle for Willie, Peter's Chair, Goggles, A Letter to Amy, Pet Show, Hi Cat, some others. I think those all feature Peter. I'm not sure about Hi Cat, actually. That's just a list I'm looking at, not by memory. But I remember that we had Whistle for Willie, which had to do with a dog named Willie and whistling for him. But it's interesting. There's a whole Peter expanded universe that you can get into out there. We'll see if that's in Marvel Phase 5. But yeah, I think Phase 5, when the X-Men come in, is when. Well,
they are doing the Guardians Christmas special, so maybe Peter will pop up in that.
I heard that. I had not. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's this year or probably next year, but.
Yeah, I don't think it's this year.
Yeah, I hadn't really looked too hard.
It might even be 5 or 10, because they announced the next 10 years, so it might be a few years down the road.
That's true. It could be 8 years from now. 8 years from now, we'll review that on that episode. 8 years from now, even if it comes out next year. So one of the things that is very interesting about this is that the author Ezra Keats was criticized for two things. This was actually kind of a controversial book when it came out. Very, very small book about a young boy. Nowadays you'd think, why? Well, a black protagonist. And so it was actually banned from some school libraries way back when. It came out in 1962, I think. And that was controversial in and of itself. And then on the other side, some people have criticized it, saying that it was written by a white author, right? And so saying did he really, know? Or whatever, that perspective of a young black child. So I looked into that just a little, and I will say, if you're interested in this, there is an article from The Atlantic by Michelle Martin called "Why Generations of Children Love a Snowy Day," and she talks about growing up in the '60s and early '70s as a black child,
And she says here in the article, I had few books with kids who looked like me, even though my parents were educators. And my maternal grandmother, who taught kindergarten, handed down her old classroom library books to my brother and me. Peter was there for me, though, and he stuck around for my daughter, who was born in 2003. We've enjoyed him as much as each other. And, so it tells a little bit about that experience. She talks a little bit about all of the different textures, which is one of the great things about the animation of the book that they tried to preserve for the show. All of the textures, he would do agonizing amounts of work. He drew a lot of experience from growing up in inner city New York, and wanted to present what his neighborhood looked like and felt like and things like that. And he purposefully chose to have a black protagonist because there weren't children weren't seeing protagonists who looked like them in books and things. So it's kind of an interesting thing just to kind of throw out there that there's a real history to something that we might pick up and say, oh, it's this nice little children's book. It's very, very simple. Even the TV show added a lot of characteristics and characters and depth to it, as they always do when they remake something. But something so simple could have such a powerful impact on people and even be controversial. I think that's kind of interesting when we see something so simple that has such an impact.
So it got banned from a school just because the little boy was black?
Yeah, apparently.
Sounds about right.
That was something. Yeah, it was on a list of other banned books, which is always an interesting process. Interestingly enough, not Lord of the Rings. Well, that might be on there later. I didn't read the whole list.
Harry Potter, right, is on there?
Oh yeah, Harry Potter, and banned, out of favor now for different reasons. The author, but we won't get. That's not what today's episode is about.
I'm actually not a Harry Potter fan, so I have no.
So you haven't lost.
I have no skin in that game.
A mourning period about it. Interestingly enough, you see kind of both sides of these kinds of things, where The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was what I was thinking of, has actually been banned for being pagan and having witches and monsters in it, and on the other hand, being banned for being too overtly Christian. So, a lot of times, probably not in the same library, but then again, could have been. You never know. So.
That PR, that whoever's working that PR money is like, yes, this is working.
We can, any news is good news about a product, I guess. But so I found one of the things I actually really enjoy about this show is the way that the neighborhood is depicted, because it reminds me of the neighborhood I grew up in, actually. So I guess let's say a little bit. Should we do a little bit of plot review? The special revolves around Peter. He's a young man, very young. It doesn't ever expressly say how old he is, but you get a vibe that he's pretty young.
Yeah, like under 10, but and under also 10, too, like if you ever know kids who grew up in New York or any major city, they're always just a little more mature. Like he's out there running around the city. I don't think they ever date when this is, but you don't see cell phones or anything, so you get the sense that it's like of the time when maybe kids would just like back. Go out until the. Yeah, it's like come back when the streetlights are on. But yeah, I don't know why. You're right. I didn't think of that, but I just assumed he was like 9.
That's a pretty good assumption. I would put him in there. Yeah, somewhere I'd say between 7 and 10. Yeah. So that would be, those are the few numbers that we have to choose from if we're right. And one of the things that is remarkable is that the whole thing takes place in like this city block area. And you're right. You're absolutely right. In the beginning, what happens is he gets up and he's talking to his mom. He's like, it's snowing outside. There's a lot of snow, and that's exciting. And snow really frames this whole story. It's Christmas Eve morning. She's made him special pancakes. They make these like snowman pancakes, and he's excited for the family Christmas party. And one of the big features, I'm sure we'll get into here, is his grandmother's mac and cheese. And I think from... you see this in the eastern part of the country sometimes. I think it originates from the South, where there are people out there who might hear this show and say, mac and cheese, what's going on there? And it's like, no, you may not get it. And I think particularly in the African-American community, at least where I grew up, that was one of those things where a very traditional recipe that was oftentimes very, very, very good. Let's put it that way, and very detailed.
A lot of butter.
Yeah, exactly. You got the Southern influence where more butter makes everything better. So I think is that a nursery rhyme? Could be. So,
well, it's funny because in my family, it's where my mom's side's Italian. So like I always associated pasta or lasagna with Christmas dinner, which is not the case for every family. So it's just so funny how all of us have that different Christmas meal that someone makes. And sometimes it's a matter of like cultural, or it's a matter of it's just the best food that person makes and they want to show off.
It's a really interesting thing, and it's interesting that they choose that to really focus on. And Peter really has two focuses for Christmas: is the mac and cheese and the party. And well, mac and cheese at the party. That's one. Right? And then the second is that he wants a sled. He wants a saucer shaped sled that he can take out in the snow. And that's very exciting. That's what he wants for Christmas. And so
I have one of those.
Yeah, I have a couple of those that I've taken the kids on before. And it's
those are fun.
Always fun when you see the right type of snow and you're like, okay. And everybody probably has an area around. When our kids were younger, there was a school that had a slight hill, and now that they're a little older, there's another area in a park that has a much steeper hill. So with that happening, his mom sends him to his grandma's to say, can you help her bring over presents and the mac and cheese and such? And it really is, like you said, it's just kind of go out there in the city. She's like, I'm going to see you through the window. Grandma will see you through her window. And there's, kids out there playing and everything. So he goes out. And he makes his way, and he meets several people in the neighborhood on the way. And that's a big part of what I want to kind of emphasize when we get deeper into it. But he has these interactions with other kids and adults. It's just very heartwarming kind of interactions mostly. And then he wants to join a snowball fight. The other kids tell him they make up excuses. Too young, sorry. It'll uneven the teams. Excuses we've all heard when kids didn't want us to play with them when we were kids. So he gets up into his grandma's apartment building. He talks to her, mac and cheese, things like that. Loads up on a saucer sled, which I'm burying the lead. She gives him his Christmas Eve present early, which is a saucer style sled, right? And he's so excited. They put the gifts and the mac and cheese into the sled, and they start dragging that along the snow. Well, he tells his grandma how he's disappointed. And so she says, well, you want to even up the teams? I'll join you and I'll throw snowballs too. And the kids are like, well, I don't know. And she's like, oh, you scared? And she joins the game so that he can do it. It envelops a lot of people on the street, the people we've met on the way over. All of a sudden, there's this big, great, joyous snowball fight. But as part of that, all of the gear, the gifts and such, get set off to the side. Snowplow comes by, swamps the thing, and gifts are all messed up. Although the gifts are mostly salvageable, the mac and cheese is done. And he's so sad. They go back home. His mom puts him in a warm bath, and he's just basically like, everything's going to be ruined, right? Mm-hmm. And his mom talks to him about how it's mostly about us being together. And he has this great exchange with his mom where he says, is everybody mad at me? And she's like, and she tells him, nobody's mad at you. We're just glad we're glad to be here together. At the culmination of this party, people that he has interacted with stop by to drop off treats or join the family. And there's the pinnacle of the music that plays throughout the thing. They sing the song about the snowy day they've had. And because his sled was also broken in the accident with the snowplow, somebody, Good Samaritan or just a Secret Santa, drops off a saucer-style sled for him. And then we close on the next morning, Christmas morning, when he and his friend from across the hall go out, and he and she are going to go out and sled, which his whole thing of getting the sled was he also wanted to share it with his friend. So which is kind of a theme about really what kind of kid he is. Yeah.
Yeah. And I like that it wasn't like they didn't pull the it's from Santa. Like, you don't know who it's from, but you know it's from the community.
Yes. They never really tell you who it's from, which I thought was very interesting. But it's there, right? And somebody did it. And you can
I thought it was from the gentleman that he donated the scarf to.
It could very well be. That's a good point. That's
the way they worded it, it kind of sounded like that was from him because, you know what?
He owns a toy store too, so maybe I'm being dumb by not knowing who it was.
Yeah. I kind of noticed that this book seemed to have a little bit this version of the story had a bit of the Paddington effect, where it's like a little boy out in the city, and then he just kind of improves everyone's lives just by being him, like the vendor with the roasted nuts. Like,
yes,
his kids are far away, but he's. It was just everything that little boy did. Like, he touched everyone's lives. In such
you ever had roasted chestnuts? This guy's selling them there. Yeah. I find a lot of people where I live now have not when I mention that, but they're good. I liked them.
It's very much like a county fair thing. Oddly enough, it's associated with Christmas, but I always have them at the county fairs.
Well, there used to be, I believe it was in Wellsboro, Pennsylvania. Also not a sponsor of the show, the city of Wellsboro. They used to do, not yet, they used to have a thing. They may still have this thing called a Dickens of a Christmas, where you would go and they had the main street. Everyone was dressed up like characters from A Christmas Carol. And that was where I first had roasted chestnuts and some little, booth that someone was selling. But let's dig into that. One of the characters, I would say one of the greater characters of this story is actually the city block that they're in a way, because that showcases all of these different people. And let's talk about the nut vendor, chestnut vendor. Sounds better. And
you're like going full on like The Wire on this. It's like Baltimore's my favorite character.
Yes, exactly. Everybody can see that made me come off as pretentious right away.
What I loved about this, and I think that's about anything, like, it's set in New York, and then like, if you show me a movie or a TV show that's set in a location, an example, if you show me a movie like set in New York and I see the Seattle Space Needle, I'm going to be like, this is stupid. But if you show me New York and it's a bunch of white people, not enough people like recognize that's not right. Like, I want to see the accurate depiction of the place you claim to be. And this actually looked like New York. I know we're supposed to have Carly, who was unfortunate, couldn't make it today. But I believe, if I'm correct, she grew up in New York City.
Yeah.
I was hoping to wonder her experience, because I just assumed like watching this seemed like a very magical version of what it must have been like being a kid in New York City, where I grew up in the suburbs. So it was a different experience.
Yeah. I'll tell you, my experience growing up, one of the things that reminds me about this is our block that we lived on, or the couple block area right around that, in a city area. I grew up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which is, let's just say, it's a moderate sized city. It's not a New York or anything like that, but it was an urban environment for sure. And
the same where I grew up too. Like, I grew up in Meriden, which is like 60,000 people. So, that's so strange. New York's a metropolis. You're talking about one of the biggest cities in the world. This was like a normal people city.
Yeah. And
small city.
We lived in an area that in some ways resembled this area as far as the blocks, very tightly round. There's little restaurants and a little bakery next to where my parents' house, where they still live in this neighborhood. And
that's so cool.
Parallel parking on the street was the only, place to be mostly, and just things like that. And while it wasn't, I'm not going to say it was like, it wasn't fictionalized magical, there was this relationship that you have, with your neighbors, that where you really do rely on each other. Funny enough, we were talking about Amazon packages just the other day, and my mom was saying that they and as the houses around right there have never had one stolen. That's never, they just haven't had one stolen, not that it never happens probably, but just everybody kind of knows that everybody's watching out for each other. One of the memories I have growing up is that we had one of those big old huge snowstorms like they just had out there, like you just had, and like my parents just had.
Literally sitting in right now. I took a shovel after that.
And it had snowed and snowed and snowed so much that the cars, just from a day or so of snow, you couldn't see any car. You just saw a mound, right? Those who grew up in those areas know. If you know, you know. Anyway, but it was around midnight that a big snowplow announcement was made. This truck came down making an announcement where they're like, snowplow's coming in 45 minutes or something like that. And so move your car is what they said. And everybody came out and dug each other's cars out, and we just did because we had to get them out of there. And so I just remember, everybody on the block, they all came out, and, there was Mr. Engel, the kind of old guy, a couple doors down, Ruth, our one neighbor. And anyway, we all come out and start digging out, and we dig out each other's cars, right away. Nobody had to say, hey, can you help me? No, it just happened. And that's been my impression of what city living is often like. Certainly there's downsides just like there is to everything. But so that's something that really hits me about this special when I see all of these people kind of coming together, right?
When I lived in Providence, I lived in the West End, which was kind of like I loved it very much. But we had one snowstorm. There was that year in the Northeast where it snowed like so much, where it was just. But we had gotten snowed in for 4 days straight, and it very felt much like that. Like we didn't have any kids yet, but we had a neighbor with a 3-year-old, so we would go out sledding with her, and but it was fun. Everyone would just fall out of their house and be in the streets because they weren't plowed yet, and we'd all eat at the neighborhood restaurant, and we'd all have snowballs. It was magical. I mean, I'm sure when it happened, I didn't recognize the magic of it. It was more like, oh my God, how am I gonna get to work tomorrow? But looking back, it was really special.
Yeah, and that actually ties in, I think, with Peter. One of the things about it is this cool, whimsical kid. He's just enjoying things. He's being a kid, and I think they have it very true to being a kid. And let's hit Chestnut Man here real quick. I can't remember his name. He has a name, but
it sounded like Danny DeVito, but I don't think it was.
Yeah. And the character definitely wasn't named Danny DeVito, but he well,
I don't think he had a name. I don't recall.
Oh, I'm sure he did. I'll find it. Maybe I won't find it. Anthony? I think he was Anthony.
In New York? Get out of here.
It's a guy.
It's like that scene in Goodfellas. Everyone's named Anthony. Anthony, yeah. Tony.
Anthony, the Chestnut Man, he gives him a couple free chestnuts. And at that point, he talks to him about, wow, you got your family party. Isn't that great? All my kids have grown up. To which the Peter just very innocently is like, why don't you take the subway and see him? And he's like, well, they're in Philly. They're in California. That's not going to happen. Why don't you meet him halfway? You know what? That's good. And he just says, that's a good idea. And you get this feeling, I think that typifies what Peter is like in the way that he's influencing people, because you see that like childlike innocence to say, well, why don't you do this? Oh, you could do this. And it's like, there's that adult part of us that's just like, oh, I just can't see my kids. And then it's like, well, it's probably a little late for this Christmas, but you can almost see him going like, oh, why don't we do that? Maybe we should do that. And that child innocence kind of is infectious in a way in this story, right?
Yeah, it's kind of sad. I gave him a backstory that he had a strained relationship with his children that he didn't want to get into, but that's probably from working in my field for too long.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe you were like,
did you abuse them? Like, what's going on here, buddy? Philly's not that far from New York.
Philly's really not that far. That's true.
For the listener, I'm on a medical leave for my job working in behavioral health, and I'm wondering if that's why I thought that.
Could be.
I'm a little burned out.
It still works though in a way, right? Because the simplicity a kid brings to it. I've often thought about like adult conflicts. What do we tell kids, right? We have adult conflicts, and then we tell our children, just say you're sorry and say you forgive the person.
I'm not going to do that.
But I'm not going to do that. Yeah, exactly.
I'm not going to do it. You should. But yeah.
That's where kids. So who knows? Funny. Maybe Peter's helping patch things up with Anthony and little Anthony Jr.
And like part of me is like, if your kids are in Philly, go to Philly. But then again, I'm like, this story is not about the Chestnut Man. I need to stop focusing on it. Yeah. I had to like get out of my own head and be like, stop trying to solve the problem and just let the conversation happen. And Peter did it so much nicelier.
You say you're burned out. How did that happen? You're trying to save Anthony the Chestnut Man. A couple of thoughts about that too. I also noticed the effect that he had on the shopkeeper, Mrs. Lee, when she was shoveling snow, and he's like, "Oh, are you making a pile of snow to play in?" And she's like, "No, I got a lot of work to do." And he's like, "Oh, well, why don't we play first?" And she's like, "Well, you can play in the pile." And later on, invites her to the snowball fight, right? That's happening. That's and so those kinds of things. And then in the end, she tells him, like, you're reminding me that sometimes right now is the time to have fun. Right now is the time to do it.
Yeah. I'm not entirely sure, but that voice actor sounded like Miss Kim from Gilmore Girls. When I looked on the Amazon, it didn't mention that she was in Gilmore Girls. I could be wrong, but it did sound like her.
She's played by Karen Hugh. And I don't know what else she's been in.
Gilmore Girls actor's name.
So I'm not sure. Interesting.
But I really like that scene. Like that's so true. Like, you and I have that today. Like I woke up and my daughter's going nuts over this, like just having the best day of her life because there's snow on the ground, and all the adults like me, and we're like, oh God, I got a shovel, I can't, blah, blah, blah. And I had to like kind of switch my like dad lens. I'm like, maybe we should experience a little magic together instead of like, ugh.
And that is true. Snow has that effect on kids. When is the right time to go out and play in the snow? Well, it's right now. And whereas an adult, it's like, it's later on. We'll do it later.
It's cold.
It's like,
it's going to get gross. Like I wasn't practicing my mindfulness or being grateful or in the moment or any of that shit. I was just like, ugh. I had just woken up, and their energy is a lot higher than yours when you wake up.
One of the things that I really liked about the show is the way that Peter engages in the world around him. There's a lot of kid behaviors, and some of the things that struck out to me was when he was walking, and this is something that's in the book too, and is just very, very childlike in a way that I think we lose and wouldn't necessarily think of as an adult, which is when he's walking and he walks with his feet pointed out, then he walks with his feet pointed in, and he's just enjoying the tracks he's making in the snow. And, when's the last time you looked down and said, what kind of tracks am I making in the snow, and how can I make them a little more fun?
I know.
That's a very childlike thing.
I remember I used to walk backwards so no one could follow my tracks. I'm like, but like, well, I don't know. I guess we were just like playing, but it would be like, my neighbors, my friends, and my brother would always do that. Like, all right, we'll walk this way and then we'll walk backwards so no one will know where we were going. No one will know.
They'll think we stayed there. And to the credit of that thought process, you've never been caught yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Not from snow, at least.
I'm liking to picturing you doing that when you come home from work. You walk backwards, so everyone's like, wow, he's still here.
What are you doing? Like, I don't want anyone to know what I was doing. Like, and who cares? It's going to melt tomorrow.
Your boss, of course, famous for tracking his employees by footprints.
But there's, you forget because you're used to it. It is, it's just so special to them. Like, oh my God. Like, and especially too, when you're so little, like, what I love about this too is it made the neighborhood look so big. Cause like, if you've ever been to New York or any urban block, like they're very small, but he's such a little boy that this little city block looked like huge.
That's a great point. I didn't think of it that way, of how big it seems to a child. And you have these like huge snow drifts from his perspective and things like that.
They're bigger than him.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's what, I don't know. I'm assuming like 3-4 feet tall, but if you have a 6-foot snow drift, like he could climb one where I would just look at it like, oh, that's cool. But like, I know there's something, it brought back some really beautiful memories of like growing up in the snow with my friends. And one of my best friend neighbors growing up died, maybe 5 years ago. So I had a lot of memories with him. So I was like, and I grew up in Connecticut. I don't live there anymore. So I don't know anyone who knows him. So I don't think about him often, but it was giving me all these memories like, oh, I remember being that small and having snowbanks being like 10 feet high. Then you'd climb up them and make igloos and like usually snowball fights and or we would like try to sled down them and make jumps. But like, it was really cool. Like there's something special about being like 3 or 4 feet tall and having snow that's like, looks like Mount Everest and you can climb it. And if you fall off of it, you don't like break anything because it's snow. So your parents will let you be a little more dangerous.
Yeah, even if you're sliding kind of in the streets, but nobody's really driving, hopefully. And
when I lived in Providence and we got snowed in for 4 days, it was like there was not a car on the road because it couldn't be. So like it was 4 days of having no streets, covered in streets that were unplowed. So it was all people were walking, snowshoeing, cross country skiing, sledding, and it was magical. It was so much fun. I mean, like, especially when you get snowed in for a while and everyone piles out of their house that one day and you're like, I haven't seen you in 6 months.
What do you take from the mac and cheese being destroyed? Here's this pinnacle. Peter mentions that even more than the sled that he wants, right? That's the thing he's looking forward to. There's obviously some symbolism there of what that represents.
Well, it's
about
his grandmother,
family.
Like that's Christmas or holidays is always about the food. It's always about like, it always seems to be the grandmother, at least in my family too, who makes the really good food that even my family now, my mother-in-law is like a fantastic baker. And it's just like, there's a great saying about how like when people when you buy a book, it's not about reading a book. It's about the idea of having time to read the book. And I feel that way with food. It's like, it's about the mac and cheese, but it's also about the sitting down, eating with grandma.
It really wraps up this idea of what the family party is about. In fact, his expectation, of course, is that the family party is no more. And he even asks at one point, if we don't have the mac and cheese, is it still really even Christmas? Right?
Yeah. And it's like he's losing his tradition. I wonder if it's like he just has this setting in his head. This is what it is. And like, just because he's a kid, we've had it every year. If we don't, I wonder if it's just more like something like, we've had it every year. If we don't have it this year, is it still Christmas? Like, it just doesn't process with him.
It really represents Christmas in the story in a way, but then it represents also, in many ways, it's similar when you watch like The Grinch Stole Christmas, right? And the presents and everything, that there's that focus, and then the focus turns out to be, no, it's actually something less tangible than that. And it becomes all more about the people that are there. And as you see the people arrive at the party, this is what it delivers a point that I think is really key to this whole story. As it's played out, the main focus I see is belonging, is the idea of belonging to something, right?
Community and...
Yeah, exactly. He invites the baker to
really
come in.
Good.
Yes, I thought that's one of the things that was really powerful about it. I still can't get over the animation. Absolutely fantastic.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
It looks like a book, like the way Spider-Verse looks like a comic book come to life. This looks like the children's book in motion. Exactly.
I think that's exactly right. And bringing a lot of those textures and patterns and things, which, once again, I was surprised to see were exhaustively researched and experimented with by the author. He actually would take paper and dye it different colors and different fabrics to decide how he was going to do it. Put a lot into the book.
And it was a white author?
Yes. Yeah. Apparently.
I'm wondering if the criticism came from people of color or other white people, because that would matter to me. I think if it's a white person, it's like, I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know about that. I'm not sure. I didn't really say that. So one of the things, though, about this idea, he invites the baker to come to the party. And I don't know about you, by the way, if a child invited you to your neighbor's Christmas party, I don't know if a 7-year-old said, hey, come to this party with my family. I don't know if I would assume I was invited.
I'd go.
See,
if I knew about that maybe that's because that's how good the mac and cheese is. It's like known throughout the neighborhood.
That did factor into the invitation. It's true. I'm
not even kidding. I'm 100. If someone invited me to something and I knew there was going to be like some famous sort of like home cooked meal, well, in the modern era, I would probably like send a text or something. But
yeah.
I took that more as like the neighborhood was so close knit,
right?
Like they all knew each other.
No,
of course,
exactly.
The baker knew his family,
and that is, of course, and there is that tightness that they had, and the idea of belonging. Just even when he talks to Anthony about missing his kids and things, I think the powerful part of that message for me was when his grandma takes him to the snowball fight, and it's interesting in the book. There's a snowball fight, and the only thing it says is some older kids were playing snowball or throwing snowballs, and Peter knew he was too young to do it, so he built a snowman instead or something. And it's just a little, once again, just a little cute, whimsical thing in the story. But they really make a deal of it here where grandma gets involved. And you get the idea that this is a pretty awesome grandma already. Doesn't she say, I know I can throw a snowball because I'm the pitching champion for the senior baseball league or something like that. It's like, so.
Nina, is that what they call her in this?
I believe so.
Yeah. Because my brother, my nephew calls and my niece, they call their grandmother on my sister-in-law's side Nina Papa.
Nana.
And they're Portuguese, so I think that was cute that like they didn't call her grandma. Like my mother-in-law is Nona, which is the Italian word for
Gotcha.
I just love all that stuff. The little nicknames, they're so cute.
Yeah. The name, as they call her Nana, and her voice talent, Angela Bassett, is grandma in this story. And I love how she is his passport in a way of saying to the young boy who's given him all these excuses, right? And this to me is like almost a symbol of like, there's always a reason to exclude someone. There's always a reason not to go out of your comfort zone. The little boy is telling him, oh, you're going to get hurt. We're too big. And, oh, well, we have an even number of teams. You're going to throw that off. Oh, well, I don't know. And when Grandma mentions it, he's like, well, we're all bigger. And he's little. And Grandma says, I remember when you were little and you wanted to play. Right? And that's when he says, all right. And so there's that it's like you can see him switch now to say, where's the reason to include, right? Where's the reason to let someone in? And I think that to me is like the really key part of the story. And I think probably why it's so heartwarming, really, to me.
Yeah. Especially that this is like a book in the 1962, like, there's not a lot of children's book with black leads as well. So like, I'm sure the Amazon show, I'm assuming that the people involved making this probably grew up with this book as well. So like there's a deeper level of inclusion beyond just Snowball Fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it captures, even though that's an added part with Grandma, who doesn't really even appear other than theoretically, I think, she doesn't even appear at all, I think, in the book. But that part is added. It encapsulates the spirit of these kinds of books, I think, of trying to say, like, here's this character who's now included on the shelves and in the literary world, right? And has made a tremendous impact. And so, it's not too much of an extrapolation to then say, let's bring that in here too. And ultimately, I think that is the message that Peter gets, is that everybody's together. And that's the idea. And he's already prepped for it because he's already inviting people and telling people, go with your family. Oh, come over with us. Come on, have fun. And so you get that. One of the things I also noticed is that when Mrs. Lee comes over, she brings pasta. Well, noodles is what you call it in the Asian culture. Mm. But she brings noodles, and she even says, oh, it's not the same as mac and cheese, but here's this. And so it's different, right? So to me, that's significant. It's different, but it's still just as good to be together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like, you're sharing. I mean, I'm a huge Anthony Bourdain fan, rest in peace. And, food is just about sharing, and it's connecting, and also those noodles look damn good. Is it me, but did the style of animation make all the food actually look like really
it did
good?
Like, I want to go there to that party.
I want that mac and cheese so bad.
I want the snowman pancakes too.
Oh my god, they look so yummy.
So let me ask you, do you have any Christmas tradish coming up?
So my wife and I will watch all of our favorite movies and television episodes of Christmas. And we also have a competition of who can buy the other one the best gift or gifts. So we get a little competitive with our gift giving.
How are you doing this year? I mean, don't disclose anything.
I whip it. Because the key is, like, even if you lose, you win. Even if you win, you lose. It's win-win. You get more presents.
Right.
And then, we growing up, my family this year will be a little bit different for obvious reasons. But
exactly.
We always would do Christmas Eve. Usually is the bigger holiday, especially in the Italian culture. It's like our big Christmas Eve, and then we'd see spend it with my family. When I was younger, we would spend it with my mom's extended family, and on Christmas Eve, and it would literally be 100 people in a house, and it was incredible. Like, I would bring friends sometimes and girlfriends over the years, and they're like, "Oh my god!" I'm like, "It's not normal," because there's just like Goodfellas. There's 700 Anthonys.
There's a lot of Goodfellas involved in this episode. This is the
I like to
welcome to the Christmas.
I have a lot of Uncle Tonys. I'm not even kidding.
Welcome to the Christmas episode of the Goodfellas Fancast.
Oh God! Well, I mean, the Sopranos Christmas episode is one of my favorite ones.
Oh no. Pretty much, it's a lot like this. It's a lot like Snowy Day, if I remember.
Pretty much, you find Grandma. Peter falls asleep, finds out that his best friend was stealing H as an undercover agent to the FBI, and you have to murder him on a boat.
Is that? Yeah. There you go.
I didn't catch that part, but Angela Bassett really pushed for that. I don't know why.
She's like, let's clean this up. No. Yeah,
this is in the script where I walk. But so that's a big one. And honestly, food's a big one. Christmas cookies. My mother-in-law for the last decade now that I've been part of this family, maybe The 7 types of fish on Christmas Eve is a big one.
Oh, wow.
And then Christmas cookies. And then I don't like fish, so they have to make pasta. So they make me pasta. And then now my newest obsession is bacon wrapped dates from the last few years, so I request those.
That sounds good.
Yeah, Thanksgiving, I fell asleep at 3:00 because I ate too many pigs in a blanket, and which are like little hot dogs wrapped in like the thing, and bacon wrapped dates. I didn't even eat turkey. I fell asleep at 3.
One of the things that we used to do when I was growing up is my mom would actually pick a theme and make things. One year it was like an English Dickens type of theme, and she made Cornish game hens. And then one year we did kind of a Caribbean theme because my dad was real connected to the Latin culture and things from time that he'd spent in Central America. But so we did like this like black bean soup with mix-ins and stuff. And so there's and now with my family now, it's funny, we actually put a lot of emphasis on the week in between Christmas and New Year's. That's often when I'll take more time off. And
same.
We'll usually try to get something like years ago, Mario Kart was one of the ones we got for that, and we spent, time doing that. We'll still spend time playing games. Well, we'll still do Mario Kart, obviously. And we try to find sometimes some games and things that we can play in between. And so those are some things that we do.
Oh, you actually remind me. One of the other traditions on my dad's side is English, and my grandparents, longer with us. But every year we would have dinner with them on Christmas Day, and my uncles and cousin would come down from Massachusetts, and it was always really special. And my grandmother would always, because they're Unitarian, it was, if people don't know much about them, they're like religious light. We would have like it would be like we would have a prayer, but because she was Unitarian, it was a moment of silence to choose how you choose. So if you didn't want to pray, we would go around to say what we're grateful for. And then because my grandfather was from England, had these little like pop toys. I don't know what you quite call them. They're like very old for English tradition. And
crackers?
They're like,
you pull them apart and they blow up?
Yeah. And then they pop, and then there's like a little toy, and they make these fun hats.
Yeah. Crackers.
Yeah, we would do that. And we also have this book that growing up I loved, that I thought everyone loved, but it turned out it was just because of our English heritage, called The Tall Book of Christmas. So that's another one. And I've been reading that with Felicity a lot. And I have to shout, I don't know if my dad will ever hear this, but my dad, Grandpa Bill, recorded some of those books in audiobook for Felicity to listen to.
Yeah.
Because she's 3.5 and they live a couple hours away, and obviously because of the reasons we don't get to see each other as much as we like right now. So it's been kind of really rebuilding that tradition. I guess I have a lot more than I realized. And then my wife gets a Christmas card, goes all out for a Christmas card every year. I think that's become a new tradition, and that's becoming a lot of fun too.
I like you're assuming it's your Facebook picture that you guys put out with the sweaters.
Yeah.
The Star Wars sweaters.
Christmas sweaters. That's
yeah.
Seems to be Star Wars themed. I need to get a Baby Yoda one.
Oh, maybe. Well, there's still Santa, or maybe the guy who owns the toy store will drop one off. So.
Oh, I know. But Peter, he donated that sweater to people in need, and he got a little twinkle in his eye, and it really made me think that he's like, I like this kid.
Yes, absolutely.
Misled. It made me a Home Alone.
How could you? Yeah, and that instinct once again to help and reach out, is one of the things that typifies Peter. I keep using the word typify. I'm going to look that up afterwards and realize it's not a word.
That's a real word.
I'll go through and edit it out if it's not. I'll edit in something that sounds smarter.
That stays in or I walk.
You and Angela Bassett. Oh my gosh.
You
guys. Famous prima donnas. Well, real quick before we go out, I have a quote from the end of the show in the book that I want to share. But tell people about you real quick. Where can they hear Chris Revill? Where can they get more Revill and reveling for the holidays?
That is a great question. Well, thank you for asking. That is thank you. That's a lot of places actually, and that used to not be the case. So I'll give you the quick rundown. So I host the podcast Let's Chat with Chris Revill, which is where I interview guests from the worlds of punk rock podcasting and pop culture. That comes out every other week. Our most recent episode, if you're listening, we just had Taylor Morden, who made, I think, my favorite documentary ever, if not one of, called The Last Blockbuster. So I really recommend everyone check that out.
I'm excited for that. Yeah, I'm excited to hear that and watch that documentary.
It's very good, but it's not about Taylor right now. He's on like the New York Times and CNN, so he's got enough press. This is about me.
You've had some great guests over there, not just me, but no, because I just know you've had a lot of people who've done some pretty remarkable things.
Yeah, thank you. I've been pretty fortunate. If you can see my Bob's Burgers blanket behind there, I've had some of the writers. It's pretty much anyone who makes art that I love. I'm like, I need to talk to you.
It's a great thing about a podcast.
And I sometimes co-host Let's Chat Live, which is a YouTube video podcast. Video chat show hosted by my producer C-Ball and business partner producer Brianna Benjamin. I am on there sometimes. And then we recently founded the Let's Chat Club, which is an online community, which is a way to help people kind of build infrastructure and expand their brand for creatives. There's a private Discord. We have a private Facebook group as well. A lot of different opportunities. And Dwight is one of our members as well. And we've got a lot of stuff going on with that. So you can find us on letschatpodcast.net. So Let's Chat started as a hobby for about 6 years. And this last year I teamed up with my business partner, producer, who I know you know and also love, Brianna Benjamin, who is the most wonderful human being in the world.
People should find her through the Let's Chat stuff and hire her to do that for their show too.
Yes, hire Bri if you can. She's incredible. She's our website. Her and Robert are great. So that's
her husband's helping
really make a go
to do. Her husband's helping to do some subtitling and some things like that on a video that for a podcast I produce as well. So yeah, really cool people.
Yeah, great people, and it's so we're really the Let's Chat Club has been really fun. It's a great way to kind of work with like-minded people and try to grow our brand and create infrastructure to monetize and either make this a hobby that pays for itself or a hobby that can turn into a career, which is what I'm hoping for myself. Nice. So please check us out, and I'm on @Let'sChatPodcast. Or we're @Let'sChatPodcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and I'm @Let'sChatRevill on Instagram and Twitter.
Excellent. Yeah, and people should go back and check out your back catalog as well. Once again, good guests. I think I've drafted. I know I got at least one or two guests that I introduced myself as a friend of Chris Revill. Since you were on his show, will you please come on mine? And I know that's helped me out too.
That's why you want to join Let's Chat Club, because we've had some cool. We got some connection. Can I ask you, are there any episodes you like? Because as you know, when you do a podcast, you don't ever know who actually listens to it.
Yeah.
So I'm now not ashamed to ask people, like, can you tell me the ones you like?
I've never listened. I've never listened actually, but no, I'm just kidding. I really liked your episode with Travis McElroy of My Brother and Me, and really nice, Can I Pet Your Dog and Schmanners, and very big podcaster guy. I really liked that one. I really loved your episode with Tad Stones, who was a creator.
Oh, Darkwing Duck, baby.
Yeah, on the original Darkwing Duck, and had a lot to say about some of the modern things. Really positive guy, and a lot of his artwork made me follow him on Twitter, which made me see a lot of cool Rescue Rangers and DuckTales and Darkwing art that he puts out.
They're all getting rebooted too.
Yeah. We won't get into the sad news about DuckTales though, about this being the last season. Anyway.
I wasn't surprised because it's Disney XD and those shows only last 3 seasons because their ages are from 11 to 13. And they've opened the multiverse, so I'm pretty happy.
So yeah, those are some of my favorites. I'd go back and recommend those for sure.
One of your new episodes that you did on Broken Brain with forgive me, the father-son who did the ketamine research was one of the best episodes you've ever done.
Oh, thank you. I loved it so much.
It also makes me want to do ketamine.
Yeah, they were.
I also don't have depression, so I don't think I would be qualified.
Yeah. No, it's something to look into.
I can get
it. I know where to get it, but is it the proper dose? They were a lot of fun to record with. All right, well, we are at the end of today's show. Let me tell you my the quote that I want to go out on at the end of the show was when they're looking outside, and after all this adventure, Peter's at the party, and he and his friend from across the hall, Sheena, are looking out the window. And you got to imagine this in Lawrence Fishburne's voice, or just go, watch the show. He said, outside, new snow was falling. Today it turned out all right, and tomorrow was going to be even better. Have a happy holidays, whatever that means to you, and hope that you're in a place where today will turn out all right, and tomorrow will be even better.
Thank you for listening to the Courtemp Arts Podcast Network. To listen to more Courtemp Arts shows, visit courtemparts.com.